President of Powers Career Coaching, LLC. Laura is an executive career transition coach with over 20 years of experience helping talented professionals from diverse industries and career stages build the clarity, confidence, and self marketing skills needed to make satisfying, successful career moves. A graduate of Wheaton College, Laura is professionally trained and certified in the Myers-Briggs type indicators, strong interest inventory, and social and emotional intelligence profile slash SEIP assessment tools. Just to mention some ground rules for today's session, Laura will pause at appropriate times to allow you to ask questions. And we will also ask you to post your questions in the question and answer box. Our webinar will be a little different today as Laura and I will be having a conversation. And I want you also to remember to focus your questions on self and career assessment rather than broader job search questions. So please join me and Laura as we discuss self and career assessment, the foundation of an effective job search campaign. Well, welcome, Laura. How are you today?
Ellen, thank you so very much. I am well, and it is such a pleasure to be with you and to be back here at the Westport Library, albeit virtually. I have been a longtime fan and grateful community member, and so appreciative to have the opportunity to join you here in this conversation today and to support our patrons and job seekers and career changers, hoping that this will be a valuable conversation for them.
I think it will be. First of all, can you define what you think self and career assessment is and isn't as it relates to job search?
Absolutely. And if I may also just offer a couple of additional guidelines for those participating, and once again, welcome to you all. I do want to make sure it's clear that I welcome your questions. As Ellen said, at different times, I will be inviting you to share those for your and others' benefit. I also would like to say that all that I will be sharing today is being done so for informational purposes, only it's not meant to be advice or guidance specific to your situation. That being said, I do hope you will take great value away from our conversation. So back to Ellen's important question, what is and isn't self-assessment? I'm grateful that you asked me that question. Let me also encourage everybody, by the way, to please take a lot of notes. I'm not using PowerPoint slides. I want this to feel and be as interactive as possible and encourage you all to take notes. So self-assessment, what it is and what it isn't. I think this is important because it is oftentimes misunderstood. Self-assessment, first and foremost, is part one of the job search process. It is part one of any well-designed, or I should say most, job search or career transition campaigns. Job search, as I like to define it, is really a three-part process, and that involves answering certain questions in order. We begin with self-assessment, think the first third. And self-assessment is designed to answer three questions. Who am I as both a product in the market and a whole person? And I'll go into that further. And from all of that excavation work, that self-awareness, those exercises we're going to be talking about, the goal, the intended outcome of that self-assessment work is to come up with sound and realistic answers to the next question, which is what's next? So self-assessment is the first part, first leg in the job search journey. that helps us answer who we are as both bottom line contributors, products in the market, and as whole people, so that we can then, with all of the benefit of that data we've mined in self-assessment, use it to make informed decisions around what our next right career move is. That's chunk one. And then the third is, where do you want to do it? So of course, it also involves some market research around target organizations. Just so everyone knows what steps 2 and 3 look like, if you will, in job search. The second chunk of the work in job search is all about taking the information and data you mined in your self-assessment process and using it to design your brand and your entire suite of job search or career transition strategic self-marketing tools. Your resume, of course, again, your brand, because in this job market, branding is very important. Your LinkedIn profile, of course, optimized. Your pitch, the answer to tell me about yourself. Your exit statements. Why are you looking for a new job? What prompted you to move from here to there? Why did you leave this job? And then a self-marketing plan that you would design. So that middle chunk of job search is all about designing your suite of strategic self-marketing tools, which you populate from, again, the data you mine and the raw material that is gathered in the self-assessment process. And then finally, the third leg of the journey in job search is actually execution, which is all about answering the question, how do I get there? How do I strategically penetrate each of my target organizations, which I will have in prior steps previously defined in such a way that I do my best to present myself as a top of mind candidate in all my job search conversations and interactions. So that last chunk of job search is all about implementing or executing your job search campaign. What strategies do you use? Networking, of course, recruiters, perhaps, how to post online strategically. And then once all of that activity bears fruit, which is interviews, how do you interview, negotiate, and evaluate offers? That is the third chunk of job search. I share this with you simply to provide context so you understand where self-assessment lands and fits and why it is, in fact, and I hope that this will become more evident, why it is a crucially important foundational component of job search. Because without that, you don't have the data you need to be able to sculpt your self-marketing tools in a way that is positioning you properly toward your next right career objective. And without the clarity around what's next, fueled by the fact-based data you gather, if you get, quote, out there too soon, which is a very common mistake job seekers make through no fault of their own, because the web invites us to do that. But if we get out there too soon without that level of clarity that occurs in the self-assessment phase, when we are asked key questions, we may stumble. And if you do your due diligence and self-assessment, you will have a much better handle on the answers to those essential job search questions. So that is a long answer to the first part of the first question. What is self-assessment? It's part one of the process, and that's what the whole process looks like. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is about part one, okay? It is also your due diligence to help you systematically gather this data, as I said, to make the most informed decisions possible. Let me quickly tell you what self-assessment is not. It is not a nice to have. I would offer that it is a must-have. Why? Because as I had alluded to earlier, to market yourself well, you first need to know yourself well. Why is that? Because vague, kind of sort of answers don't sell in job search. It's really that simple. And in this job market, it really is critical to have clear answers, fact-based answers, because that is what will also fuel your confidence, and confidence sells. So you need adequate levels of self-knowledge and market knowledge in order to run a best practices campaign. And that is my wish for all of you, to be able to run a campaign that is like an Olympic level campaign, not just a pretty good most of the time campaign, a best practices campaign. And that's my long answer to question number 1, Ellen.
Thank you so much. Certainly clarified things for me. Why is self and career assessment so important to individuals, either in or contemplating a transition into a new organization or career?
Thank you for that question, because that answer is not necessarily an obvious one. Self-assessment is a funny thing, right? Because it's a little bit invisible. And for those of us who tend to be very driven and results oriented and concrete, it looks a little murky, but actually it's not. There are a lot of milestones in the process of self-assessment to help people realize its value. But the reason it's so critical is because we are in a job market like none other right now, today. Not only, of course, is it globally competitive, not only, of course, is it multi-generational. And I will say, speaking for myself, every time I look to my left or right, another generation has joined us in the workforce, which I think is terrific. It's, there's a whole nother webinar right there on the multi-generational workplace and job search. But the fact is, it is very competitive. And then, of course, we remain, albeit at a different place today than if I were having this conversation with you a year ago, we remain in a global pandemic. So competition is dramatic, and this is very important. It is no longer the most qualified candidate who lands the job. It is the candidate who is well qualified, of course, and who is the best self-marketer. And strategic self-marketing is fueled by self-knowledge. That's why self-assessment matters so much. And as a PS, but not an insignificant one, it is inside your self-assessment work and within your self-assessment process that your branding elements lie and surface. And again, in a globally competitive, multi-generational workplace, in a pandemic where our economy has been turned upside down and inside out and continues to evolve, knowing our brand, again, for another webinar, but knowing how we uniquely add value is essential to be able to communicate that correctly. And those elements are discovered in self-assessment.
Well, when is the best time to conduct a thorough self and career assessment process?
That is a good question as well, Ellen. And, part of me would like to say there's really no bad time to do it. There's no negative time to do it. That being said, in my experience, I would say to all of our participants joining us today that one of the best times, if not the best time, is when you are what I would call a critical inflection point in your career. Now, this can happen at many different stages of your career. And I've worked with individuals at really every stage of their career over the course of my journey as a career coach. But it's important that it's particularly important to dive into this work when you are at a place in your career where you are either currently employed, but you feel like you've hit a wall for any number of reasons. You have outgrown your role. There isn't the same room to advance. The political currents are shifting. There may have been a merger, an acquisition. You're not sure where you're going to land in it as the new organizations try to align with one another. So it really is a place where perhaps the culture is no longer a good fit for you or the value system of the organization. When you start to feel a level of either curiosity and or discomfort, enough to say, I haven't really had occasion to pause and ask myself, is this what I want to keep doing for the next 10 or 15 or 20 years? And if you're just uncomfortable enough so that you don't want to keep doing what you're doing, perhaps where you're doing it, or you might be in transition for the first time, where you've never really had occasion to ask this, these inflection points are very good times to do this deep dive, because we are not paid in the course of our careers to talk about ourselves. We are simply paid to deliver value. We're not paid to talk about the value we deliver. We're paid to deliver it. So the language that we need to develop, again, born out of the self-assessment work, is it's not an inherited language. It is the dialect of the job market, and hiring managers, we need to learn how to express that in that dialect so that people hear us can see the value. So you might be in transition for the first time in your career. Again, you may have hit that wall and the stakes are high and you don't want to leave this next move to chance. That is when it is a very good time to pause and get to know yourself at this level.
Great. What are 10 key facets of self and career assessment that can help job seekers gain the clarity and confidence needed to present themselves as effectively as possible throughout their job search campaigns?
Thank you, Ellen. Here we are now really at the kind of the guts of this conversation. And I want to show you, I want to offer you an imaginary visual to see this. Self-assessment, once again, is designed to help you identify who you are so that you can then make informed, sound decisions around what is next. Okay, your next right career move. So if you imagine a pie, let's call it an apple pie with a circle in the middle, and the pie has 10 slices in it, and each of those slices have a little arrow pointed to the middle of the circle, and the circle says, Ellen, I'll use you if I may as an example. What's next for Ellen? We don't want to wing it when it comes to that answer. This is very important. So self-assessment is our journey, one slice at a time, to fill in those blanks. It's almost like creating a puzzle, and these are the pieces. So there are actually 10 slices, if you will, to this self-assessment pie to help you make the most informed, sound choice around what is next for you in your career, be it at an early career stage, mid-stage, or latter stage. Okay, this applies across the board. So I would like to talk about each one, and then I'm happy to take questions as we do this. Does that sound okay, Ellen?
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's begin with the first slices of the pie, the first two. As I've said before, we begin the self-assessment journey by defining who we are as products in the market with bottom line value to contribute. And then we go on to define who we are as whole people. Why do we do that? Because the job market is interested in the value we bring to their bottom line. That's why potential hiring managers and employers want to see the way we add bottom line value. Whether we do it by living on the revenue line, in business development, sales, etc., or we do it with our work on the expense side, I like to say, of the income statement, operations, finance, human resources, all of the functions that help support and grow the business, in addition to the revenue generators and producers, okay? It doesn't matter what side of the income statement, and hope you'll stay with me as I use that kind of language. I will confess I'm an ex-banker. In my first life, I was a corporate and private banking lender before becoming a career coach. So I have that stuck in my head still. And it can be very helpful with this because it doesn't matter what side of the income statement we live on, if I may, as long as we are clear on how we add bottom line value. Now, those who are operations managers, CFOs, and HR and talent management leaders are adding value in different ways than those who are head of strategic business development. But it doesn't matter because we all do it. Some do it by increasing revenue and others do it by preventing waste, lowering costs, improving efficiency, preventing litigation, and so on and so forth. We all add value. In job search, we need to know how to convey that. So the first two slices of the pie are all about how do we contribute bottom line value. Number one, we have to do it by identifying our key skills and traits. The things we're good at, in other words, our skills, and our traits, our style and personality with which we execute on our skills. So let me talk about skills a little bit more. We all have a couple of different types of skills. We have what's called work-related or technical skills. Those are the skills we have built because of the industry sectors we've lived in. They are indigenous to the places we've been in our careers. So as a corporate finance professional, as an analyst, as an investment banker, as an M&A attorney, as a marketing specialist, a digital specialist, again, a human resource leader, a business development professional. If we've lived in the pharmaceutical industry, we have certain skills that we would not otherwise have built, and knowledge and technical knowledge had we not been in pharma. Had I not been a corporate and private banking lender, I would not have things on my resume like credit analysis, right? Middle market lending, high net worth lending, ratio analysis, which by the way, I had trouble letting go of when I became a career coach until people were saying, hey, Laura, what's up with those skills on your resume? I'm like, but that took me a lot of work to learn those skills. What do you mean? And the answer was, tell us what's more relevant to being a career coach. And I thought, second type of skill we all have, okay? Transferable skills. So please keep this in mind. You may very well market your technical and work-related skills as a top-tier skill set if you choose to stay in the exact same industry and industry segment. That would make perfect sense. Okay, but if you are going to make any iteration of a career change, and this is certainly true with the more dramatic ones, you may want to lift up what I'm about to describe as the second type of skill we all have to a higher level called our transferable skills. Transferable skills are portable. We can take them with us into other careers and industries. For example, if I am the chief revenue officer or chief marketing officer of an organization, the ability to generate revenue is transferable. Now, I may be competing with people in the new industry into which I'm going, and that is a whole different decision that is nuanced, which we probably could have another webinar about. But what's important to know is selling is a transferable skill, okay? Business development, okay? I would say social media marketing now is very important, and it crosses over, of course, industry sector and function as well. Communication skills, interpersonal skills, oral and written communication, absolutely essential. Emotional intelligence crosses over every function, every level, and every career path. Okay, negotiating skills, relationship building skills, analytical skills. So the people who began to read my resume back in the day when I first became a career coach, which was a radical career shift for me, helped me realize that what they were interested in is the analytical skills I brought as a result of the work I did as a banker, the ability to present a cohesive deal, hopefully, to a group of people, the ability to communicate to a group as well as one-on-one. the ability to develop business with potential borrowers, and so on and so forth. My transferable skills were about training and coaching and presenting, communicating, being very analytical, and taking my appreciation for research and analytics and data and my background in business and bringing it to a clientele I work with through my own practice, who largely is in similar type functions. I work with a lot of financial leaders. I work with a number of operations leaders. I work with HR leaders. These are all people who rely on their own analytical ability and data gathering skills. So these are transferable and they've become very, very helpful. You need to know what yours are. So what are your technical and work-related skills? What are your transferable skills? And what are your traits? Some call it self-awareness or self-management skills. Those are the adjectives people use to describe us and we use to describe ourselves. Okay, very important because it talks about our style. So what you need to do at the beginning of this process is identify your key skills and traits. And then there's a process of whittling that down, and that beyond the scope of the time we have today. But that matters because people are hiring us for what we are qualified to do and our skill sets. And once again, for anyone considering any type of a career change, you will find that you're going to want to elevate your transferable skills and traits and really be able to support them with, here comes slice 2 of the pie, your accomplishments. Okay, the second slice of that self-assessment pie is our accomplishments. What are they? They are illustrations of the skills we claim to have. So the first, I'm just checking my time. The first goal is to identify your key skills and traits. And then the second goal is to make sure you can show people the evidence that you've got them. It is not enough for me to say in an interview when someone says, Laura, give me an example of how you develop business. For me to say, I'm just really good at it. Been doing it for years. That doesn't sell. What I need to do is give a concrete example of, and I'm going to give you a framework for accomplishments, a problem or situation with which I was faced. Think of the letter P. The action steps I took to resolve that problem, and the results, quantified as much as possible. We call those PARs. There are other acronyms, but that's mine. And we need to have at least, if you were working with me as my client, I would say I'm inviting you to come up with and draft 2 PAR stories. Think 60 to 90 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes, problem, action, step, result, that identify each of the skills you claim to possess. So if you tell me your ability to improve processes, process improvement is a sweet spot for you, show me, please. Give me an example. These are the answers to behavioral interview questions. This is the bread and butter of job search, by the way. Knowing your skills, knowing which ones you want to bring forward and bundle together into your new role, and then being able to prove that you have them with those examples. And I would recommend at least a couple of accomplishment stories. Think 3-paragraph stories, somewhere between 90 seconds up to 2 minutes, out loud, if you will, per each of the skills and traits you want to illustrate to your target organizations. Okay, because that shows me the bottom line value. If I hear that you had an issue going on, here's how I handled it. First, I did this, then I did this, then I did this, then I called my team together, then we did this, then we did this. And as a result, within the first 9 months, we were able to shave 25% off our overhead and increase our revenue by 50%. That convinces me that you're a bottom line contributor. And that's what the job market's interested in, okay? So before I go further, because skills, traits, and accomplishments, those first 2 slices, skills and traits is slice 1, accomplishments are slice 2. are so important in job search. I like to say the bread and butter of job search. I would like to pause and see if there are any questions related to skills and accomplishments or anything I've covered so far.
Someone has asked, why can't I just do self-assessment myself?
You could try to, and some people do. So that's always an option. That's always an option. I would never say don't. I think it's more about what I would offer is familiarity, right? So if you have never done it, and I can use myself as an example, when I am trying to get a deep, full, and accurate understanding of myself, I don't always have the clearest lens in the what I like to call echo chamber of my own head and my own mind. So while I think I know myself well, it can be very helpful to undertake that self-discovery process with one or more trusted others, I like to call them. And each of us is sort of the captain of that team of trusted others and can decide for themselves who should be on that team. So it's certainly an option to try and do this on yourself, do this for yourself, of course. But if you want to make sure you're getting the most accurate view, sometimes it can be hard to be objective. So it can be really helpful to get other people's eyes on you. And that's why this process really has rhyme and reason to it. I hope that helps.
Okay, and when you talk about doing the personal assessment, know yourself, what is it that versus the professional specific job skills? Could you, sort of say your self-knowledge is more personal, or is it more professional in terms of specific job skills?
I think that's an excellent question as well. And what I would say to that is, in the context of job search and career transition, it is important for us to understand ourselves both personally and professionally and be able to understand not only our nature and ourselves as human beings, but absolutely in a concrete way, what our skills are, the skills we've built over the course of our career. So both matter. And there really is a blend, because when we are talking about self and career assessment, it's really important to understand that we need to have a holistic view and understanding of ourselves, because we are more than our job skills, but those are essential, right? It's essential to know what we are qualified to do based on our experience. But we are also individuals with a unique way of delivering on those skills and a unique way of bringing value by executing on those skills, because we all have unique characteristics and a unique style, actually, which we're going to talk about as well. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, and are there ways to match self-assessment results with career recommendations? Or are self-assessments more useful to help us sell our strengths to a given market?
So that's I love that question. These are excellent questions. So yes, so the answer is yes and yes. Self-assessment absolutely can help us make informed career decisions. Absolutely, because knowledge is power. And this gives us the opportunity to know ourselves well enough, and the job market, by the way. That's just a preview of things to come in one of the other slices. So assessment informs our career choices. It also helps us get a very realistic, pragmatic view of what the job market is telling us is attractive to potential employers in terms of skill sets and so on. And yes, yes, assessments can be very helpful. So when I use the expression self and career assessment, I include in this pie, which we're getting to momentarily, key assessments that you can actually take. This pie, by the way, everybody, what I'm doing is I'm offering you a sort of a glimpse, if you will, into what, part of my coaching model and the assessment exercises I offer my clients. So think of each slice as an assessment exercise, and some of those slices are actual formal assessments. And yes, it's important to understand your strengths as well, because when we know our strengths and are able to bring as much as possible of our energy into a role that enables us to play to our strengths, that can really feel like we are working in our zone. And when we feel like that, we are firing on our natural strengths. Oftentimes it translates to increased satisfaction and performance as well. That is not to say we can't gain great value by stepping out of our comfort zone, but there's a body of work that would say playing to your strengths is very, very strategic, not only for the individual's career satisfaction, but organizationally, to be conscious of each person's unique strengths and being able to offer them the opportunity to leverage them as much as possible. I hope that's helpful.
I think it has been. Thank you so much.
You're so, so welcome. There will be time to continue with questions, but I just want to make sure I cover all this content. Sound okay, Ellen?
That's fine. Let's go on to point 3.
All right, number 3, slice number 3, door number 3. So this exercise has to do with understanding yourself in terms of your likes and dislikes. So we've covered knowing who you are in terms of your skills and traits, knowing who you are in terms of your accomplishments that specifically evidence those skills and traits. Now it's about, from number 3 down, it's all about who are you as a whole person. Remember, the first 2 are all about who you are as a bottom line contributor. Show me your contribution. Now it's all about who you are holistically, because we want to make sure that the choices you select in your careers, and you are empowered to do that as much as possible, align with the whole of you. Because we are more than our skills and our accomplishments. We are whole people with slice 3, likes and dislikes. So it is an important exercise to undertake to understand your likes and dislikes of each of your roles, former and current. And this can include volunteer roles, because I'm guessing that we may have some people here in our conversation today who have robust volunteer backgrounds, which have significant value. So likes and dislikes, this helps inform your choices about what's next in terms of the work itself. What of the work itself did you enjoy the most? What didn't you? The culture, the compensation, your boss, your colleagues, career growth potential. All of this matters. And there are ways to do that analysis. Again, it's just time does not permit us to go deep on that, but I want you to understand that that is an important exercise to undertake. Number 4, it's important to know who you are in terms of your values. What's important to you? What matters to you? This is where that personal and professional line blurs, and that's okay. Again, because we're whole people looking for our next role. The values are one of the most important exercises to undertake. You want to understand what they are. You want to understand what matters to you most today. I will say some of our values may shift over time. Perfectly okay. But what matters most to you? Is it working from a place of integrity and trust? Is it working in a way that provides you the opportunity to achieve, to grow in your career? What matters most to you today? Job security, which is challenging these days. We all now realize we have to kind of wear the hat of CEO of our own careers and navigate it, because change is constant. Just wanted to make sure I say that. But values matter, and here's why. And again, they change over time. So obviously financial remuneration can be very, very important for many of us. It certainly was for me. There was a time early in my career where what I would call the financial piece was, I wouldn't have put it toward the top of the list. As long as I lived and worked in New York City, that's what I wanted to do. And as long as I could pay my rent and eat, that was really all I needed to do. My responsibilities, were different than they were a couple of decades later when I became a single working mom with 2 jobs and 2 kids. And all of a sudden, money found its way up to the top. It became very important. So totally okay. Understand it will shift. What's also important to know, though, is that you want these values to be clear, because oftentimes when it comes time to deciding if you want to accept an offer, if you don't have your values out loud, explicit in front of you, one might be respect. And you have a little voice inside of you saying, I love this company, the compensation's great, good work-life balance, but there's just something about the person who's going to be my boss. I can't quite, but it'll probably get better. I'll just try and ignore those comments that were made during the interview process. I bet it'll get better. That is actually, in my experience, more wishful thinking. And if respect is an important value to you, and I hope it is, in my experience, I have rarely, if ever, seen that get better once you start working. So when we listen to our value system and value set and honor our core values on paper, it is far less likely that we will silence that little voice that says, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I noticed that that person said, listen, do anything you need to do here to make the sale, wink. But if integrity is important to you, that's not going to feel very good. And that makes for a very unpleasant workday. So again, that's a plug for values. Now, number 5, your natural preferences. We are all born, according to the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, with innate natural preferences around how we get energized, how we see the world and take in information around us, how we make decisions. And this has been brought into a very practical realm in an instrument, an assessment instrument, of which I am a fan and an active, qualified and certified user, called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It is extremely helpful to understand your MBTI type, personality type, because it will help you to understand why some roles may have been a more comfortable fit than others. And it can also help inform your career choices. Now, we are all adaptable as human beings, so we can adapt into roles that may or may not align with our true type. That is for sure. And that's not a bad thing. But it is important to be conscious of when we are adapting. So again, a whole other webinar on the Myers-Briggs, but it is a very valuable assessment. And it's important to understand that slice, your natural preferences. Number 6, your interests. It is important to understand when you are at a pivot point, an inflection point in your career, to take a moment and learn your full range of interests. Why? Because when you are at that point where you're really saying, I've got a long runway ahead of me in my career, and I really want to be as fully satisfied as possible, it is important to give yourself permission to look at your interests more deeply, so that there may be a possibility to bring in, if not all, some of them more deeply into your next role. And there is an assessment tool out there called the Strong Interest Inventory. Also one I use extensively in my work with people at every level. This is applicable to individuals at every career stage and level, to help people get a handle on their interests and begin to think outside the box they may have thought in all their lives, and say, well, I never really realized I have such a passion for culture and the arts or social justice. And I realize that I am really part creative. And if I were to pull that in together with my transferable skills and bring them together, perhaps I could land a role and market into a role that's just a little bit more aligned with my interests as well as my skills? This is the time to ask those questions. And then 7 is your work-life vision. It is important to understand your goals. When we have a vision of where we, as concrete as possible, by the way, a vision statement that outlines where we want to be over, again, depending on where you are in your career over the next 5 years, or perhaps 10 to 15 years. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be living? What are you envisioning your lifestyle to be? What level of work-life balance, family balance are you looking for? And by the way, that is crucially important today as well. We could have a long conversation about work-life balance and how the pandemic has really upended so many people's work-life family paradigms, and what that has led us to begin to reconsider. So that's part of your value exercise, by the way. But it's important to know what your goals are out there, because when you have a clear vision of where you want to be and how you want to be spending your time at those time intervals in the future, then you can make more informed, short-term, tactical career decisions in support of your longer career goals, your long-term strategic career goals. Again, knowledge is power. When we have that view, we can make more informed decisions that align with those goals. So that is number 7. Number 8 is compensation considerations. Now, here's where we get very practical, and this is very important. It is important to understand realistically what you are going to need to earn in your next role. I always say to people, I don't wear the hat as a financial advisor, but I have a healthy respect for the finance money piece of this, both because of my first profession and because of my life experience. I always say to people, when we are talking about helping you navigate a career transition, you need to be clear on what I call the money piece. If you have a financial advisor, that is something they can help you do. If you do not have that clarity, I strongly recommend you look to resources to help get it. And above all, we want to make sure, if I were coaching you, for example, I'd want to make sure I understand your current compensation level, perhaps, and what level of flexibility you do and do not have, because we're all different. We all are different in terms of this. And in order for someone like me to coach you responsibly and you to make responsible choices, it's terribly important that that be etched in the pragmatic financial. Is this decision that I want to make one that is going to support my financial needs and requirements? Okay. And by the way, what I should also say on that is it is possible to structure what I like to call a multi-lane job search campaign, where you might have a burning passion to become an entrepreneur in this space, but you also recognize for the next few years that you need to maintain a certain income level to take care of yourself and or perhaps other family members. You could run, if you will, a job search campaign with 2 lanes going concurrently, and 80% of your effort may need to be in that more practical role where we get as close as possible to the kind of work you want to do every day, but leave some space for what might become that entrepreneurial opportunity. Now, of course, the composition of that campaign structure is different for everyone, but I just want you to know there is flexibility in it. And then number 9 is your realistic dream job. It is important after doing all of this assessment work that you scope out and you begin to take that data and use it to literally draft a view, if you will, of your realistic dream job. Now, there are many different criteria around how to identify that, but it is a really exciting exercise to be able to sort of put pen to paper, so to speak, and draft what that looks like based on the due diligence you've done before it. That's why we do this in order, because it's cumulative knowledge. Okay. And then finally, after all 9 of these exercises, I would invite you to pivot from this internal research you've done. This is all internal about me, about you research, to external market research. Now it's time to quality test what you've defined as a potential realistic dream job. Again, a dream job with realistic legs under it, okay? And that is when you take the 1 or more next career objectives you begin to identify through this work, and as a result of this work and slices 1 through 9, and you say, okay, I now have here 3 or 4 potential roles that would really be exciting for me. Knowing that is not enough, I would submit, to launch a campaign off that. What you want to do is quality test it, and let's reality check it against the job market. So this is when we pivot outward and do external market research. That's the 10th slice of the pie, where you begin doing it as online research. And then again, of course, depending on if you're working or not, you would put a campaign together where you would also want to do on the ground research, so to speak, people research through your networking, which obviously if you are employed, there are different nuances to that. You want to be extremely careful not to put your current employment at risk as much as possible. You want to really mitigate that as much as possible. That's a different topic for a different day. But that target market research is important. Here's why. You take your realistic dream job possibilities, particular roles you want to do, where you want to do them, at what level you want to do them, at what compensation level you want to do them. And then you do your market research. You're looking for roles that match that. You might learn that you're completely aligned with it, and then you have said, okay, there's alignment here, and now I can build myself marketing tools in support, and my marketing plan in support of those career objectives. Or you might find there's a gap in qualifications. Maybe all the roles that you've identified would make your heart sing, but they require a PhD, and you don't have one. There are 2 things you need to do then. You either recalibrate the work objectives to be more realistic without needing to close that gap and get that PhD, as an example, or you make a decision to increase your skill base or your education and decide a path around continual learning. So that's your choice, but you do need to make sure that the market research you do informs your next right career choices, so that when you now fill that circle in with those roles, if you will, you have confidence that you have made as sound and informed decisions as possible before putting them in the circle and launching a campaign in support of them. Because time is valuable, time is money, we don't want you to waste it. And this market research is a way to make sure you're going to run your campaign efficiently, because your choices are hopefully fulfilling and as realistic as possible. Now, I know that is a lot of information that I have provided. I want to pause now, Ellen. Oh my goodness, is it really time?
Yes.
And just quickly, I'll follow, let me give some final thoughts and then answer questions if I could. Do I have time to do that, Ellen?
Yes.
Okay. What I'd like to just offer is a reminder that, actually, I think I'll pause that. I want to hear questions first.
Okay. I'm looking at questions and answers. Can emotional intelligence level be improved upon?
Love the question. The answer is yes, it can. Emotional intelligence is about behavior. It's really about our behavior. And again, I'm speaking as somebody certified in the social and emotional intelligence profile, and that body of work would argue that unlike IQ, EQ can be improved, okay? But it takes self-awareness. You need to understand what your current level of EQ is and all the different competencies. But once you do understand it, there are tools, techniques, and strategies that you can apply to improve and enhance your level of EQ and build strength in some of those 26 competencies that may need growth. Yes.
Okay, let me see. There are some more questions coming up.
And anything we've talked about in the self-assessment wheel and wheel of fortune, the self-assessment pie, and why each piece matters before I close up today with Ellen.
Okay, there is one other question is, one person did want to know that you offer the Myers-Briggs assessment, and you do. So we can clarify that. And then going back to emotional intelligence, can it be scored or measured?
The answer is yes. There are a number of emotional intelligence instruments that have been designed over the years. In fact, my most recent assessment certification was in one of those instruments called the Social and Emotional Intelligence Profile, which is an assessment you can actually take that will provide scoring. And then it's important, I would say, to debrief that with somebody who is trained and qualified in it.
And
So,
finally,
yeah.
Somebody had asked, where could we get these tests for self and career assessments?
Okay, so there are a variety of sources. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the Strong Interest Inventory, and the CQ assessment that I'm speaking of and am certified in are the kinds of assessments that I offer my clients when we are in a coaching engagement, for example. Okay, I am a believer that assessments matter, they're important, and it is very helpful to take them with people who've been trained to debrief them with you and help you understand your results. So that being said, I have heard there are assessments and different versions of different ones online. I'm not familiar with them per se. These are the three that I am most familiar with. And I would say career coaches for sure, and people who specialize in using them for career development, leadership development, and the like.
All right, one last question before we have to wrap up. Is the Strengths Finder interesting or useful, that indicator?
Thank you so much for asking. I am not certified in the Strengths Finder, but it's fascinating and yes, interesting, and I think very useful. And there is a book called Strengths Finder 2.0, I believe. I
Yes.
believe it was published with through the Gallup organization. I love that. I encourage people to get that book and learn more about it. It offers another interesting facet to who we are.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And yes, I just have a
Are there any other final thoughts you would like to offer our webinar attendees today?
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. And thank you so much for being such a gracious co-host. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure to collaborate with you.
Thank you.
So yes, just 2 thoughts and 3 invitations. Number one of the parting thoughts is, please remember knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have about yourself in the job market, the more informed decisions you can make around your next right career move. And self-assessment is the due diligence you need to do to gain the knowledge you need to make confident, informed decisions. Number 2, I believe it is never too soon or too late to conduct self-assessment. So please know that wherever you are in your career or job search process, if you have not had the opportunity to take in and take on this process of deep self-discovery and career understanding, it's never too late, nor is it too soon. And I say that to those at early stages in their careers. And then finally, 3 invitations from me to you. I welcome you to link in with me on LinkedIn. You can find me under Laura Powers Career Coach. If you just put that in your search bar, I'll pop up, and then I welcome you to send me an invite. It would be my pleasure to welcome you into my LinkedIn community. I also welcome you to follow my LinkedIn company page, which is recently launched. And once you link in with me, I will send you a quick link for you to be able to do that. So you can see what's happening on that. And then finally, for anyone, and I did hear this in the Q&A briefly, who is interested in learning more about the coaching offerings and resources provided by my private coaching practice. If that is something that you'd like to explore further and have a conversation about, I welcome you to do so. And the best way to do that is to schedule an appointment for a conversation with me by phone on my calendar, which you can find either on my website, which is powerscareercoaching.com, or my LinkedIn profile. You'll see my headshot, schedule a consult, and all you have to do is click the link.
Okay.
And thank you.
That sounds fantastic, Laura. Thank you so much for this fascinating discussion today. As you said, we've just scratched the surface of a very interesting topic. And I thought your comment about the fact that we are all CEOs of our own career makes self-assessment even more significant. So thank you very much, Laura, for coming today. And I'd like to invite everyone to check out the Westport Library's webpage, westportlibrary.org, to find more programs coming up in both our general areas and in our business areas. So thank you all for coming today, and thank you, Laura, very much.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Stay well.
Yes, bye-bye.